And welcome back to another edition of the Wolverine Live. I'm John Borton, and you don't see Tom Crawford tonight. Shout out to him. Feeling a little under the weather tonight, but we have a special treat about which the Wolverine faithful were very, very excited when I announced that today. We have in our midst one Wayman Britt, star of the 1970s basketball teams for Michigan. Now, I believe Kent County administrator over on the western side of the state. Someone who was talented enough and versatile enough that he was drafted not only by the NBA, but by the NFL. Wayman Britt, we've been excited about this. Welcome to the Wolverine Live.
Oh, John, thank you for having me on today. And it's great to see you. Just a disclaimer here. I retired from Kent County back in July 31 of 2021.
Oh,
So for the folks that did know that, and now I have my own company, Wayman Britt Enterprises, that I'm running, and got a lot of fun stuff that we've been up to. So,
well, I appreciate you bringing me up to date there. I knew that you had a lot of things going, and didn't you write a book?
yes, wrote the book, Fulfilling the Dream, My Path to Leadership and Finding Purpose Through Serving Others, just out in October, and we're very happy with it. It's on Audible and Apple and Amazon. People can get it on my website and so forth, WBE Books, and very pleased with it. We've done a number of signings and hope to do a few more, and really getting a good response from it, and really having a lot of fun.
Well, excellent. You are certainly. Hey, there we go.
Look at you
There's the book now.
guys.
We had great, like I said, great response to you being on. People have such good memories. Our more veteran fans remembering those days, and certainly I do. A couple things I want to talk about from your playing days. One, I mean, I threw out there that you were
Uh-huh.
drafted not only by the NFL, but also, or not only by the NBA, but also by the NFL. How does somebody do that? I'm sure our younger people are looking at that and say, how did that happen?
Well, it was all due to the fact that I worked my butt off, and I guess people that would come to the game, like Bo Schembechler and others, found that I had a pretty good good way of backing up and playing defense, being agile and so forth. And they looked at that, so it's a transferable skill, and felt that if he can do that on the hard court, he can do that in an NFL. So people were looking at me right from day one. Bo Schembechler wanted me out twice for his team, and I told him no. Unfortunately, I didn't. I didn't realize who Bo Schembechler was at the time. If I'd known now, I probably would have played for him. Such a great all-time coach for the football team. But my prowess on defense was exceptional, I guess. And people like Bart Starr and George Allen, others looked at me and wanted me to come to them. In fact, I was looked at by the Lions, the Packers, Cowboys, and the Redskins back in the day.
Pretty amazing, and it shows the level of not only versatility but skill and toughness and a whole lot of things that went into
Yeah,
your playing career.
yeah.
When you look at that, and then you got drafted by the Lakers. Just your thoughts about your post Michigan days, and you're getting into the business world
Yeah.
eventually.
Well, back in the day when I was drafted, the NBA and the ABA were both entities. ABA was just struggling big time, and so I was drafted fourth round. Unfortunately, I didn't stick with the Lakers. I was cut right at the end of the regular, the not the regular season, the exhibition season, and the Pistons had my rights, and of course, I was allowed then back into the NBA the next year. But unfortunately, that didn't work out either. At the time, the salaries weren't at the levels they are today, and they weren't making any money until Magic and Isaiah and Jordan, those guys came along, Larry Bird, until they came along. So really, it wasn't really the kind of career you could bank your life on. So I made a decision to stick with my career that I'd started at Steelcase, and gave up the whole idea of playing professional sports because there just wasn't any solid future there.
Well, it sure worked out. Obviously, you've done great things in your career. You did great things in your Michigan career. One of the ones that people always remember, I believe, when you were a senior and you that team came that close to winning it all and
Yeah,
to the
yeah.
championship game. Talk about that season a little bit and what you remember from that.
We had a wonderful team. We were fast. We were really, really good. I mean, Indiana was the top team in the Big Ten that year, and they knew that we had their number. We almost beat them twice, that year, and especially down in Bloomington. We played them. I think we got beat by like 1 point at the buzzer, a tip in. Maybe it went into overtime. Not sure now, but we were a great team. We weren't as tall and as brawny and strong as that team, but we were quick. We were fast. We had Ricky Green, Steve Grody, Johnny Robinson, Phil Hubbard. We were the five starters, and we were to be reckoned with. And it showed. We beat Rutgers, who had been undefeated with Phil Sellers in the semifinal game in the NCAA. And of course, we had beaten Notre Dame that same year, Adrian Dantley's team. We weren't playing against any slouches.
Sure.
So to get to where we were pretty decent. Phil Hubbard's numbers retired. Ricky Green played in the NBA for quite a while.
Hmm.
And Grody and I were both drafted. He was drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers, I believe, and I was drafted by the Lakers and played a little bit with the Pistons. So we were a great team. It just happened that Indiana was just so much bigger and stronger, and they had a lot of depth with Abernathy and those guys. Steve, what's his name? I think it's Steve Kerr. I forget his name. Young man that came off the bench, but they had a strong team with Buckner and Wilkerson and Scott May and Kent Benson and those guys. They were like men. They were men
Yeah.
already.
And a coach that made a name for himself eventually.
Bobby Knight, the infamous Bobby Knight, the guy that would
Yes,
put
sir.
fear into the hearts of any referee, and he would control those games. Man, he was a great coach. He,
Yeah.
along with Al McGuire, and Digger Phelps, those were three great coaches. And John Wooden, we went up against John Wooden's team when I was a freshman sophomore, my sophomore year. Played them at Pollard Pavilion. So we had an opportunity to play with some wonderful coaches, play against some wonderful teams and coaches.
No doubt. You mentioned Ricky Green. I still go back and forth with one of my colleagues, Chris Ballas, and he mentions about how Trey Burke is his all-time top Michigan point guard, and I say, okay, I hear you what you're saying. And he was National Player of the Year, and he was very, very good. But
Yeah,
man, you want to talk about somebody that could get to from one end of the court to the other faster than
yeah,
almost anybody I've ever seen. That's Ricky Green.
yeah. He had speed. He had overdrive speed. He could dribble both balls, both hands down the court faster than anybody that I'd ever met and played with. The guy was he was a sprinter. And Trey Burke was a great player too. He had the hops.
Oh
I
yeah.
think he had probably better hops than Ricky, but Ricky Green was the fastest player that I think we've had in some time. There've been some other ones, and he was strong too for a point guard. He was pretty strong, so he could hold his own. He could get down the court.
So when you look back at your Michigan days, how did that all kind of play into where you went from there, and whether it be in sports, in business, how did it affect your life?
Well, it gifted me with the ability to work with people and to be able to deal with difficult situations. Playing forward at Michigan at 6'1" and 3/4 inches tall and playing against some of the best guys in the country taught me a lesson that anything's possible if you put your mind to it, your work, your plan, and never feel that the opposing team or players any better than you. I had the attitude that UCLA was no better, Notre Dame was no better, Marquette was no better than we were. That was the attitude that I had, and so we went up against guys. It, I think, strengthened my belief, number one, in myself and my abilities, but also this idea that you can achieve any goal that you set out to do. I would do special things. I would run before practice and so on and so forth. The extra things, it was a lot of discipline that we put into that team that year, and it taught me how to lead. I was the captain of the team. It carried over into my life at Steelcase and at Kent County, and I truly felt that the kind of environment that we had, which Michigan at the end of the day has a wonderful athletic program, academic program, and so when you come out of there, you're one of the best in the country, in the world. You become one of the better people that's ready for any challenge that comes along your way. So I know that was a unique opportunity to have gone to Michigan, played at Michigan, been around some of the best professors, coaches, people. It just prepared me for the world, and I'm very grateful for having the opportunity to be, to have started there for 4 years. I started mid-season as a freshman, and it just gave me that extra edge. I was born to be a leader, and it just grew me into even being a better leader.
Yeah, well, so many people weighed in when, like I said, when they knew you were going to be on. They said, "Great, great person, great." I have such fond memories of his playing days, and so, like I said, very thrilled to have you on with us. And I know from talking to some and listening to you over the years that not just Michigan basketball, but Michigan football as well. So we're going to be talking a little bit about
Yeah.
both of those tonight.
Yeah, I would
Um,
love to. Yeah, I've been watching them all year. It's a wonderful team. I'm so grateful. I got a chance to hang out with Jim Harbaugh this summer. He came to Grand Rapids, me and Jim Hackett, with the
okay.
Ford Foundation. So yeah, it was great. It was great, great year. I loved it.
Yeah. Well, then you will, I'm sure, be one of those who will be glad, relieved, whatever, along with a lot of Michigan fans when Michigan and Jim Harbaugh finally inked the contract.
Yes,
We'll be talking about football in a little bit, but I want to start with basketball because we're in the middle of basketball season, and it's a little bit of a rough go for Michigan right now. They are really struggling. Pretty much blown out at Penn State the other night.
yeah,
And my question to you is,
yeah,
as you see this team
yeah.
as it's going right now and as it's struggling, is this a season that Juwan Howard and this team can salvage?
I don't think so. I just watching them over the past 3, 4 games, the Purdue game and then Penn State game recently. You just see that they just have not matured and grown to the point that they're ready to go up against the guys that are as good as them in the league. They just don't have the confidence. They don't have the kind of, I would say, the grit and determination, the cockiness, we had that, and a lot of teams have
Sure.
had that. Jalen Rose's team, they had that in spades. They don't have that. They have maybe at times some players that operate that way, where they know and they believe that they can challenge anyone. I just don't see that happening. It seems like they're looking for someone on the team to become the leader, and I don't see that happening. It's just not in the team. They're just a great, great bunch of guys, nice kids. But when it comes to playing against the best in the country, you got to have a different gear. And I don't see that
Mhm.
coming out of them.
So is that at least in part a matter of experience? I mean, like you said, you played as a freshman. They're playing a lot of young guys, but they have a guy that you would think would be the guy to rally around, be the leader in Hunter Dickinson. So where does this come? Where does
Yeah,
the leadership and the cockiness, or both,
yeah.
come from?
He's a gentle giant from my standpoint. He has it from time to time, but he's limited. He has great skills, but uh, he's just one of these kids who's gifted in certain ways, and that's maybe not one of the ways that he's truly gifted. I mean, in fact, I would much rather see that coming out of a guard or a forward. Someone who has control of the ball, who is out front dealing with, attacking the offense right up front. Those are the kinds of people that you really want to see that in. The center, okay, that's a luxury, but you really want to see that in the guard play and the forward play. And one other theory that I have is that when you have two sons playing on the team, you have Trey, Jet Howard and his brother, that can sometimes undermine the confidence of some of the other players. In fact, unless I don't know, and I don't know truly what's going on behind the scenes, but I would say that when you have a father's kids playing on the team, that sometimes can signal to the other guys, perhaps we don't have the right to assert as much as maybe what we should. And so maybe guys aren't willing to push out and bleed. And I think Jet is having a great year. He's shooting the ball really well. I saw the game at Penn State shooting the three ball, and it was like five or 6 for 6 or something like that. But you want to grow the confidence in everybody. I would love to see Kobe Buff,
Kobe Buffkin, yeah.
yeah, to take off and become that leader of the team. I saw sparks of him this past game. He went down and he put the ball out front, and he had that slam out front on a break, and he's got good hops, but it just doesn't seem to happen the whole game, and I just wished it would. I don't know. I would be out there pushing hard on them. I like Baker's attitude when he comes in the game. He's got
Mhm.
that spark, that fire. I just wish they had it from all of them all the time. I wished I could see that more in all of them.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm wondering is how is that a developable aspect of this thing? You talk about defense. I don't think that this team can play defense consistently enough to the level that they can. Just the other night when they were trying to
Yeah,
challenge Purdue, they were hanging in there. But then you give up the easy bucket, you get the blow by, and
yeah.
you. Of all people, can address this because you were such a fantastic defensive player. A lot
Mhm.
of people say, "Well, defense is effort," but it's got to be more than that, isn't it?
You gotta really want it, and you gotta say no excuses, and somebody's gotta have that attitude. Whoever the captain of that team is, you gotta say, "Look, we can't have you messing up like that. You've gotta get on each other and expect each other, hold each other accountable." That doesn't seem to be happening. I never see them really confronting each other for the sloppy play or the slow play and that sort of thing. So it has to come from within the attitude of the team. Now, the coaches, perhaps they could inspire, motivate them to do that. But if the kids really don't have, if it's their personality, then whether they want to or not. But if they're not really, jaded that way, you see,
Mhm. Yeah.
that makes a difference. I mean, you can have the size, you can have the skills, but if you don't have the attitude, the moxie, and all of those attributes that say, "Look, we are going." It's like watching a Michael Jordan play versus some other athletes that were 6'6", right? This guy
Right.
didn't quit. He didn't take no for or Larry Bird. These guys, or Magic Johnson, these guys that you see that were so driven, right? So competitive. That's what we need. We need that competitive fire.
So that begs the question for me, uh, going all the way back to the mid 70s, who were the confronters on those teams? And maybe you could summon up a story from back in those days to kind of illustrate the point.
Well, I was, of course, the confronter on our team, although I maintained a mild-mannered, all-American attitude. I tried to, show sportsmanship, but when it came down time to, okay, are we going to go get this? Uh, I had that attitude, mild-mannered, but yet tough and gritty when needed to be. Johnny Robinson was the same way. Steve Grody was the same way. We had 3 of us that were that way. Ricky Green wasn't that feisty. Phil Hubbard wasn't that feisty. It was Grody, Robinson, and myself on that team. And you look at John Howard's team. It was John Howard. I mean, Juwan Howard. It was him. It was Chris Webber. It was Rose as well. They had that cocky, determined, take no prisoners, we'll come at you, will if we need to, attitude. And that's what you need. You don't have to be disrespectful. You have to show sportsmanship, but you got to have that fire.
And you kind of have to have guys that will take it in the right way, I would think,
Mhm.
if when you get after them, that it does
Yeah.
fire them up and make them play harder.
Yeah, and I think we've lost something over the years when you see a lot of the transfers happening in the transfer portal and so forth. It's happening in football and basketball. Guys that don't get a chance to play, they transfer. The young kid that transferred to Arizona State, he had that fire.
Mm.
I saw him play. I mean, he had such an attitude when they played them this year. Man, that kid, he had fire. Forget his name now, but he was a point guard that left the team. If we could have kept him, my goodness gracious, that's what we could have benefited from. So, but he knew that other guards were coming into the team, right?
Yep, no doubt.
Yeah,
And you're referring, of course, to Frankie Collins, who was,
Frankie Collins.
uh,
Yes, yes,
yeah, who really showed up in the tournament, and
yes,
then
sir.
everybody was looking forward to him taking over.
Right,
But you
right.
got guys transferring in, and he
Yes.
decided, okay, well, maybe I won't,
You know
I
what?
won't stick around for this.
I wished he'd stayed, and I think maybe
Mm,
he has some second thoughts because he wasn't starting that game when we played them this year either. And so you look at that. If he had stayed, just think with the young man who had transferred, he got hurt early on. He would have been a
yep,
starter by now.
yeah.
Bad move. Stay warrior, stay with the team. Bo Schembechler used to say, you stay with us, you will be champions. That kind of attitude, and I wish that would become the norm instead of. And I love the fact that our big center didn't leave to go to the pros. They go
Hmm.
so early, play 1 year and then they're out. I mean, I wish that wasn't the case either, but it's just the way the teams are now. That's the way the world is.
I remember hearing an interview with you and how excited you were when Juwan Howard was put in place, and certainly he has accomplished some things here. He's gotten to the Sweet 16. He's won the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Um, with where he is right now, how I guess how difficult is this situation this year, and how does he try to bring his team out of really being demoralized after a loss at Penn State like they experienced?
Yeah, I think he just has to accept the fact that they're not where they need to be, and it happens. It happens to any team. We had that at Michigan when I was a freshman. We had Henry Wilmore and Campy Russell and Ken Brady, John Lockhart, Ernie Johnson, and myself, of course, and Joe Johnson and a few other people. That was a great team, but we were terrible. We
Mhm.
were like middle of the pack and should have been like 1 or 2 with Indiana and Minnesota. Well, what did Johnny Orr do? Well, he regrouped the next year. That's what he has to do. Even with all the talent, we were just not able to put it together to play as a team back when I was a freshman at Michigan. Jawan's going to have to do the same thing, and we have got to be supportive of him, forgiving of him, so that he does in fact put the right players, put the right schemes on the table, and they win. It's unfortunate, but that's what happens. Sometimes, for whatever reason, the teams don't gel and they don't have the right mix, and you don't win. So we got to accept that. Let's have one bad year. We'll give him one bad year because I expected him to really cause a lot of young kids to want to play for the University of Michigan, which is what happened. We've got some wonderful recruits. We've just got to keep our confidence. Don't fret, and then come back strong next year. And I think last year, the debacle with that Wisconsin coach, assistant coach, I think that really hurt his confidence and maybe perhaps some of the respect and confidence from the team. I don't know. I think that that did some damage to him too. He needs to rebound and recognize that, that's done. This year, we're probably not going to win many more games, and not going to be tough in the Big Ten championship series either. I don't think they're going to do that well either. I mean,
Hmm.
it takes a lot to recover from what they've shown thus
Yeah.
far. So
Okay, so but they don't have the luxury of saying, okay, this is a bad year. We'll look to next year. They are still stuck in this and trying to do something about it. Tell me, you noted that Hunter Dickinson, in your eyes, is not the kind of fire and brimstone guy that's going to get after it, get after people. What could he do with the games remaining in this Big Ten season and beyond, maybe it to lift this team?
yeah, if he hasn't already figured it out, he has to build a compact with one or two of the other players, the better players of the team, and maybe it's Buffkin and him. They've got to have a conversation about the fact, look, we have got to take this to the next level. We can't afford to be this way. They've got to be the yin and yang. He's got to find that person. I see him acting a little differently when a few of the others guys, I forget the other young forward and Baker, when they get on the floor, it seems that there's a certain level of intensity that comes out of him. He's got to find that same attitude and partnership with Kobe Buffkin. He's got to find that with someone else. They have got to be locked at the hip, just like Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. They've got to be locked, and he's got to find that. If he can't maintain the attitude of being gritty, he's got to find somebody else that can. And they've got to help each other out. They got to talk each other up. That's what has to happen, because he doesn't have all of that. He has a different skill set. So Buffkin, I don't know. Jed Howard, somebody has got to team up with this guy and say, okay, this is on us. Maybe it's the three of them. We got to have a conversation. Maybe they already are. I don't know. I don't know what's happening behind the scenes, but that's just my theory.
Yeah, and it's got to hurt that you were counting on a grad point guard, and you're playing a guy who has some talent and has some fire, but was expected to play maybe 10, 12 minutes a game this year,
Yeah.
filling in.
Yeah.
And Doug McDaniel, I thought it was a little bit telling when he tweeted out about the fans and how they were fickle and things like that. I just think these days you got to
Oh,
block all that
absolutely.
out.
Be quiet. You're a freshman. You have no right to even speak up and speak out about anything. You haven't arrived. You haven't achieved anything yet. You got to just, somebody needs to check him and check him hard. Whoever the senior captain or whoever that is, you have a conversation with the young man and say, what in the world are you talking about? You know, you you haven't shown us consistently yet that you can bring the ball up the floor, you can attack the defense, and all the things that some of the great point guards have done. Come on, man, you're still learning. So I you know I think that what's happened is people have gotten spoiled with the fact that they come to these teams and they think because I was recruited by Juwan Howard and they had such great players before us that are playing in the NBA, then now is my shot. Now I'm as good as they are. Well, you got to prove that. You know, you
Mm-hmm.
can't just come in there and think that's because I've arrived. You know, I have all of what it takes to be that stellar athlete and perform at the high level. No, and it's proven. You know,
Yeah.
it's proven they're not there yet.
Well, and speaking of not there, I would say most people are looking at this as being a not there team when the NCAA tournament rolls around.
Yeah,
They will brave talk and they will say, hey, we can get on a run, we can get it done, and
yeah,
you never want to rule things out for young men, but
yeah.
certainly, as you have noted, things aren't looking good in that direction. And if this team is not going to the tournament, if it doesn't get on that roll, what are the important things for it to really hone in on and improve in this back half of the Big Ten season?
They got to take a hard look at themselves, look themselves in the mirror, and say, We're responsible for this. It's nobody else's fault but ours. And they got to do some soul searching. And they got to say to themselves, we're going to end on a good note. Bufkin's got to say to himself, you know, Hunter Dickens has got to say to himself, this is not us. And they've got to recommit themselves to finishing strong and recognize the fact that, okay, perhaps if we lock in, we can win a few more games. We can go undefeated the rest of the year. They've got to have that attitude. Now, proof's in the pudding,
Sure.
but it's got to start with those two guys, in my opinion. Those are the leaders of the team. And if they can get the other guys to rally around that, they can't depend on Jed Howard. He's a freshman, regardless of how talented he is. He's just not at that level of being able to exude the leadership and the confidence to make that, contagious amongst the players. It's just it takes a lot for a freshman. Sometimes you get gifted athletes, like a Michael Jordan or a Magic Johnson. I've said those names before, who just have it. They just exude it. But we don't have that. We don't have that player.
So what is the coach's role in all of this? I know after the last game, Juwan Howard was trying to maybe deflect some criticism from his players and take it on himself. He said, obviously, I didn't get this team prepared well enough to play well enough and that sort of thing.
I think he takes too much ownership of the problem. I think that's his problem. I think at the end of the day, he has actually I would say baby that team and actually cover for that team almost to a fault. I watch and observe him. He almost sometimes act like one of the players. You got to back away, be the coach. Let them be the team. Let them take responsibility for their behavior, for their actions sometimes. You suck it up. Quit covering for these kids. That's what I think's happening. He's not on the floor anymore. And I think the sooner he gets that point where he says, it's your problem, you fix it. You don't have to be negative in the press or anything like that. You don't have to embarrass a player. I saw that one time. One of the players, the young freshman, the tall guy, I forget the kid's name. He came at him at one point through a game and kind of pulled him out, yanked him out, and it was very obvious. I don't think that's the behavior you need to have towards the player, especially a kid like that who's just, got all of this physical talent and ability. He just needs to, have a year under his belt. He'll be fine, But I think he can be a little bit enabling to the team's, acceptance of the fact that perhaps it's somebody else's fault and not ours.
All right, maybe signal to the bullpen for Wayman Britt to come in and give a fiery speech at some point.
Yeah. I would love to have that opportunity to talk, but I'm sure he wouldn't want that to happen. Just like Beeline, I remember going down. I would send him notes and text messages and things like that. Sometimes he would listen though, and in fact, it helped. It helped back when he were having some problems with a couple of the players. I spotted some things and I shared that with him. My hope would be that Juwan would call me too. I'm here. They know how to get a hold of me. Lisa Nicholson knows how to get in touch with me. They know where I'm at. Okay, what do you see? Help me, because you've been there. You know what it's like, but nobody calls. Only you, John. And Tom.
Well, and we're getting all the wisdom as a result of it. So, like I said, not only for basketball, but also with football. You mentioned seeing Jim Harbaugh last summer, and now a little bit of a sigh of relief from Michigan fans in that Sean Payton has now been hired as the head coach of the Denver Broncos. That came out this afternoon, and so the assumption is, okay, this is done. Jim's back. We're going to have another big time year in Ann Arbor on the football field. Put in perspective a little what the last 2 years have meant after the dry spell that this program has had, and is it? I guess I asked this of Tom Crawford a week or so ago. Is the juice worth the squeeze when you have this you've had for 2 straight years this. Is he going? Is he staying? All that kind of thing.
Well, I think he's staying. I think that he loves that team and they love him. I mean, he's got a special team, and why wouldn't you want to stay there and see it through? You know, that team was here in Grand Rapids this past summer, and they had a wonderful stay over at the President Ford Museum. And Jim Hackett and I were there. We gave him a little talk and we toured him around and so on and so forth. And we hung out with Jim Harbaugh. Man, what a wonderful, wonderful group of kids. And Jim is just a great guy from my standpoint, man. He's just people I think have got him wrong. I think they misunderstood what the guy was about. He loves those players, and he's a coach. He's a player's coach, and he has surrounded himself with some really great assistants now. So I think that he is going to stay, at Michigan. At least see this team through. The players that he has with him now are like his kids, and so I don't think he's going to leave. I think he's going to see it through, and I think next year they'll come back and they'll be successful again. And watch out, we could be the national champion. I think we would have been the national champs this year if he'd made that decision to throw that flag when that touchdown had occurred. And I think that he probably underestimated the resilience of that team and thought, well, we'll get them in the second half. No, Jim, throw the flag. I think he's learned from that.
Yeah. Say a little bit, if you would, about the Ohio State football game the past 2 years. I mean, it was such misery for a decade and a half, really. And I've talked to former Michigan football players that said, even a year ago, I watched that game with tears in my eyes.
Yeah.
How fired up do you get about Michigan Ohio State football?
Fired up. I couldn't stop yelling. My dog, I have a dog, an English Springer Spaniel named Britta, and she was like, "What is the matter with you?" And I'm yelling and screaming. My wife says, "What's the matter? What's the matter?" I says, "Look at what's happening." Look at what's happening. They're gonna beat them. And oh my gosh, it was such a wonderful thing to see, Oh, how I hate Ohio State. I mean, that's even at the basketball team level, we knew what time it was when we played against Ohio State. And it was up to us to make sure that we never lost against those guys. And, to see us now finally coming back to prominence, that's where we should have been all along. We should have never sunk as low as we did. And it's so great to see us back again, and we have to keep that mantle of being the leaders and the best, period.
Yeah.
And Jim understands that. And now he's got the right team behind him, the coaches, the assistants, and all the other folk around him. And we just got to keep loving on him and telling him, look, we're with you, support you, and let's do this,
Yeah. Well, of course, you were in school right at the heart of the 10-year war. I mean, from the heartbreak of Dennis Franklin to, that breakthrough in 76.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
that you have to, I assume you had some really strong football memories then.
Oh my goodness, yes. I was good friends with a lot of the football players, the men, I forget what they called them, the guys that had
The mellow men of Michigan?
yeah, those guys. There was my friend Clint Azarig and Donnell Coleman, and those guys were my friends. In fact, Donnell Coleman and I would go back and forth to Flint and work there at the GM factory summers. We did that 1 or 2 summers when I was at Michigan, summer job. But anyway, we were in close contact. They loved our team. We loved their team. We loved what they were doing, and we brought a whole different vibe. And I respected Bo Schembechler and what he was attempting to do with that team. And I'm so happy that they bought into that, that attitude, we're going to be the best. And we need to bring that back. It's contagious, man. It's contagious. Those guys felt it, knew it, believed it, and then demonstrated it. Okay. And that carried over to the rest of the program. So now I see it happening again. I hope that they can be contagious and influence the basketball team once again. We took pride. we wanted to be better than the football team. The football
Mm,
team wanted to be better than us. You're
yeah.
not going to outdo us. We're going to go to the championship games. That's the attitude that we have. And they
There
were
you
like,
go.
okay, we'll take it to the next level. We'll go to the Rose Bowl. We'll be the best team too in the country. That was the attitude, back and
Yeah.
forth. That's how we were.
That's great. Good stuff. I would be remiss if I did not, before I let you go, ask you about the NIL, about these collectives. You.
Yeah,
I remember Bo Schembechler very clearly. You know, room, board, grant and aid. That's
yeah,
what you get here. And now you got a situation where Blake Corum could see seven figures as a college senior.
yeah.
Your thoughts about how all of this has developed?
Well, it's unfortunate that it had to come to this, but it was inevitable that at some point, based on what's happening in the world of sports, the billions of dollars that are being won on national contracts, TV and radio and so forth, and all the other advertisers, the equipment companies, the shoe companies, and so on and so forth that feed the beast, and players weren't being fairly, I would say, compensated, not monetarily, but if you look at the coaches' contracts, you look at what some of these people are actually getting paid to do, you say, wow. And why is that? Well, it's because of my brand, it's because of who I am as a player, and so on and so forth. Well, if we can figure out a way to fairly compensate, it doesn't have to be monetarily, but in some way, maybe put some dollars away for when you get out of college, do something, but show some sort of way to level the playing field so that I'm not putting my life out on the line and you benefit. I mean, back when I played University of Michigan, Johnny Orr, Bill Frieder, we were not expected to win, but both of those guys, Coach Orr got a huge contract at Iowa State. Bill Frieder went on to Arizona State. They became millionaires. Millionaires. Well, what
Mhm.
happened to a lot of the athletes at University of Michigan when I played? If you weren't a first round pick, you weren't going to become a millionaire, you know? And I know the fact is that Bill Frieder, if it was not for my relationship with him, he would have never come to the University of Michigan, right?
Mm.
He made out like a bandit.
Yeah,
And
no
that's not
doubt.
right to have, he was a good coach, but Bo Schembechler figured it out. It's not about how much money you make. It's not about who gives you the biggest. It's about how many games you win and what your love and affinity is for the University of Michigan. So I think that in some ways it's right to do. But now people like Blake Corum who are saying, look, I'm going to donate and I'm going to give some of this money away. I don't need that kind of cash. I'm going to use it as a charity. Now,
Mhm.
that is exactly what we need to see. I wish the coaches had that same attitude, that they would give away like Jim Harbaugh has been doing. If we
Yeah.
could have that same kind of attitude or make policies that say this is what you're going to do, if you're going to be a benefactor of that, you don't spend all the money, you put it away, you use it for charity, those kinds of things. I think that's the way to get around.
No doubt about it. And JJ McCarthy doing the same thing, setting up a
Yeah,
charity. It is really good to see.
right.
I know this much. Wayman Britt was worth $1 million to Michigan basketball teams in the mid '70s, and you have been worth $1 million on the Wolverine Live. I'll tell you what, I want to do this again because it's been all kinds of fun
Yeah.
this hour, and we will have Tom Crawford with us the next time, Lord willing. I appreciate you, Wayman, for joining us and everything that you brought to Michigan basketball and your thoughts continuing on about this program.
Well, I thank you. I love Michigan. I love the state of Michigan too. I love this team, and my hope and prayer is that they rebound from their woes and they come back and they finish the team stronger than what people expect, and that they rebound next year and become a great team again, like we always expect. The leaders and the best.
You bet.